Hello and welcome back. This is Alexandra, yet again, and the 5 secrets to a better menopause. And in this video, we are going to deepen our understanding of how habits create our reality and how we can skillfully use our diet and our lifestyle to have a better experience in our bodies during menopause. We will also talk about what happens to hormones during menopause and how we can shift the way they show up for us. So yet again, stay tuned. I'm gonna hide behind my computer and off we go. We talked about diet already a little bit, diet and lifestyle in the second secret. Maybe you are aware, of course, that diet has a huge impact in the way you feel generally in your body, but actually making the link between menopause and the actual way you're living your life, that sort of connection is not quite happening as a society yet. Even in a health conscious community like where I am living, women weren't able to put it together. And even if you did have that realization, it is sometimes hard to actually make the shift, to make the changes in your diet and lifestyle. You lose faith after a while, you lose motivation, or you just don't have enough guidance to actually make the switches. Because what is diet and lifestyle? It's a habit that we have done over time. We sort of fall into a groove of what we do every day. Because what are habits? Habits are automated behaviors. We don't really think about them. Like, for example, you get up in the morning, what do? You take your toothbrush and you brush your teeth. There's nothing to think about. It's just you take it, you put your toothpaste on and you brush your teeth. You can almost do it in your sleep. And just like that, any other habit gets set into motion by certain triggers and we just do them. And unless we become conscious about them and actually put 1 and 2 together, and habit creates X result, other habit creates Y result, unless we actually become conscious around how the habit is actually influencing your reality, we actually don't make a shift. If you have ever read a book on menopause, you might have noticed that at least one big chapter, or maybe even half the book, is dedicated to diet and lifestyle. Look at Christian Northrup's book, Susan Weed's book, any menopause book that you pick up. And if you're anything like me, I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. That's really cool. I should do that. And then I close the book and I forget all about it. That is likely because it's just simply too much information to take in. And again, it hits against that habit wall, let's say. And it's hard to actually make the shift on your own. So here's a quote by Fyodor Dostoevsky. He was a Russian novelist in the 19th century. And he lived in Russia and he explored human psychology. And he said that the second half of a man's, or woman's in this case, the second half of a woman's life is made up of nothing but the habits he has acquired during the first half. I'm going to say this again, as the second half of a man's life is made up of nothing but the habits he has acquired during the first half. This could be a very gloomy perspective, because that means, oh my God, I've already messed up the first half of my life and now I'm just going to have to reap the benefits of my poor choices. Well, you could adopt that view, or you could say, oh my God, there is so much opportunity in this quote. If the second half of life is really determined by my habits, I actually just need to switch around my habits and I can create the body that I want and the life I desire. Here's an equation that's often attributed to Gandhi. It goes like this. Thoughts create words. Words create your actions. Your repeated actions are your habits or lead to habits. And your habits create your reality. So what that means is whatever you think creates your reality, which relates to our first secret. So when you have the impression that menopause is going to be a dreadful experience, just because maybe you have seen your mom go through it, or a friend, or just in general, you just got the sense of like, oh my God, this menopause thing is coming around and I'm getting old. If you have those kind of thoughts, they actually end up being your reality. Now your thoughts turn into words and you're going to start talking to your girlfriends about, oh my God, this menopause thing, it must be a dreadful thing, and yada, yada, yada. And all of a sudden, the reality is going to show up for you in that way, because words set in motion a vibration, and that vibration manifests, and it manifests in the way you are actually speaking it. And so in the same way, repeated actions create your habits, and your habits create your reality. So again, there's many plugging in points to this. If our habits create our reality, well, if we have good habits, the reality is going to be great. If we have bad habits, the reality is going to be really gloomy. So which one are you choosing? We have a lot of power in this equation. So I want to turn your attention to a statistic that around hot flashes. So hot flashes is one of the major symptoms that women in menopause experience, especially in America. 75 to 80% of women have some form of hot flashes. Half of them are moderately severe to severe, and half of them is like mild. But 75 to 80% of American women experience them. But now, look at Thailand. In Thailand, only 23% of women have hot flashes, only 17% in Japan, and in fact, there's not really a word for hot flashes in Japanese. And apparently, in the traditional Mayan culture, there are no hot flashes to speak of at all. So I investigated this a little bit more, and I consulted some of the experts on women's health, and one of them, Christian Northrup and Robert Swoboda, who both have extensive knowledge on the subject. And they both were saying, if we go into traditional cultures, which was African traditional cultures for Christian Northrup and Indian traditional cultures, India traditional cultures for Robert Swoboda, they say women don't even know what we're talking about. If we start talking about menopause and the symptoms related to it, they just sort of shake their head and say, like, what are you talking about? Okay, I don't have my period anymore, so that's the extent of it. So it makes me think that, wow, the way we live our lives in the West has a profound impact in the way we experience our lives. That diet and lifestyle and our sleep pattern, our rhythm, our routines actually have a profound impact. Because the other piece to the story is that when women get taken out of their traditional societies and decide to live in big cities, say Bombay or Delhi or something like that, they start showing up with menopausal symptoms as well. So the core belief that I'm holding really is that diet and lifestyle have a huge impact, and we're going to dive into that a little bit more in this next section. So secret number 3, habits create your reality. So let's dive into the diet conversation a little bit more. The basic equation is, if you eat harmonious food for your body absorbs it well, and intelligent cells are being produced. We talked about that a little bit in the second video, where we said, hey, whatever you take into the body actually becomes your cells, and a huge role plays the digestive system. You have to be really able to absorb the food properly so that intelligent cells are being produced, because intelligent cells are going to do a good work. So there's 3 parts to diet that I want to put your attention towards. One is what we eat, and that seems to be becoming much more popular. People are sort of getting it as a society that eating organic food's better, local food's better, maybe even growing your own food has a lot of merit. So they're sort of going back to our grandmothers and great-grandmothers' way of feeding ourselves. Of course, we can get even more refined with that and eat seasonally and eat according to our body constitution. Then we have how you eat, and this conversation around how you eat, I feel like hasn't really penetrated society enough. In Ayurveda, we say that 80% of what you eat is actually the way you're absorbing it is more determined about how you eat it. I often bring the example of, say you're eating a McDonald's meal and you eat it with your friends with good chatter and good conversation underneath a beautiful tree, sitting on the grass, really enjoying yourself and savoring your food. That is actually a better choice than cooking an all organic meal with the best ingredients ever, but you're cooking it while you are angry at your husband and really annoyed with your children, and then you grab your food and you drive to work and you eat your food on your way to work. The body's in a sort of stress response during that time, and it's not going to be able to absorb the food, although the quality of the food is really good. And thirdly, we have how well you digest your food. You can eat the best food ever on the planet, but if you can't digest it because your digestive fire is low, we call it Agni in Ayurveda, because your Agni is low, then your body is not going to be able to absorb it, or absorbs it in a way that doesn't create really healthy tissue. And remember, endocrine tissue, glands, which produce hormones, and the hormones themselves, they are produced out of the food you eat, ultimately. So digestive health is really paramount. Let's look at the section of how you eat a little bit more deeply. And there's so much we could talk about in this section, but there's just one or two things that I want to point out to you. So the first thing I want to talk to you is about dinner. Often in American households, dinner is the main meal of the day. It is eaten somewhat late, and if not late though, heavy. So why would a late dinner and a heavy dinner be bad for our health and bad for our hormonal health, and why is that not a good idea? To answer that question, we turn towards the Ayurvedic clock, which is the times of the day and how energy works. The Ayurvedic clock really shows us how energy works and what activities are good for a particular time of day. So the clock goes like this. So it goes from 6 to 10, from 10 to 2, and from 2 to 6. That applies AM and PM. So during 10 to 2, it's the Pitta time of day. Pitta is a word that comprises fire and a little bit of water, mostly fire though. So between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., the fire is really high. That means fire is responsible for transformation. So eating a big meal between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. makes a lot of sense because the body already produces the enzyme, the acids, the pitta in the body that is needed to digest a big meal. Now, if you look at from 6 to 10 p.m., that's kapha time of day. And that's where dinner falls. Now, kapha is comprised of earth and water. Earth and water are heavy and stable, and they have no fire in them. Kapha has no fire in them, but fire is the thing that causes transformation. So if you're eating a big meal at the end of the day, the body doesn't have the digestive power that you need to digest meat or, just really intense substances that take a lot of digestive power. So shifting your main meal to the middle of the day makes a lot of sense looking at the Ayurvedic clock. Now, what does it mean to eat a heavy dinner? Like, how can you make your dinner lighter? How heavy a meal is determined by the kind of substance that you're eating. So, for example, meat is very difficult to digest. Juices are very easy to digest. Water would be the easiest ever to digest. Fruit is relatively easy. Cooked veggies are relatively easy to digest. On the other hand, meat's really hard, fish is quite hard, raw vegetables are very hard. So if you're eating substances that are hard to digest in the evening, then you will have a really rough time digesting them properly. And again, poor quality tissue is going to be created. How else can you make a dinner heavy or light? Well, by the amount you eat. So if you're eating a big amount, that's more difficult to digest than a small amount. So maybe you choose to eat a substance that is harder to digest. So say you're really craving meat in the evening for a particular day. Well, maybe the amount you're eating is going to be really small, and it's just going to be a small palmful just to satisfy that need for the protein that you're feeling. And then at lunchtime, you can eat a big portion. And what's the third one is food combination. If you're eating one type of food, that's very easy to digest. 2 types of food, more difficult. 3 types of food, even more difficult. 4 types of food, most difficult. As an example, say you're making rice. Simply just eating the rice is easy to digest. It's one kind of food. Say you're making a lentil soup with that. Eating the rice and the lentil soup together is more difficult to digest than either one of them on their own. If you then add a vegetable dish to the rice and the lentil soup, that's even more difficult to digest, as if you were just eating the separate parts by themselves. And then you say you add some sour cream to it and some guacamole and maybe a side of sauerkraut or whatever, and you're making it even more complex, and then you finish your meal off with a salad or started with a salad. Now that's like really complex to digest and not a good idea for the evening. You can do that at lunchtime. As we said, pitta or the fire element is really big at lunchtime, and so eating a big meal makes a lot of sense. The other piece to this is if we go back to the Ayurvedic clock, pitta time is also high between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., so in the evening time. At that time, the body goes into cleansing mode. So it's another transformative process where the body is saying, hey, we're doing a really good house cleaning job in the evening. Now, if you're eating a big meal that takes forever to digest at, say, 8 p.m., the body still is digesting the food by the time 10 o'clock rolls around, and the body can't really do its cleaning job. Bad idea. Yet if you're eating a earlier lighter dinner, say around 6 o'clock, and the body has 4 hours to digest it until about 10, the body is done digesting it in the stomach and it has absorbed it already somewhat in the small intestine, then the body can go into its cleaning job and the organs can be replenished. Your mission, if you are willing to take it on, is to eat an earlier, lighter dinner. You may want to roam around on my website. There's some recipes for lighter dinner recipes. So for example, blended soups are really good. I have a ginger carrot soup on my website, as well as a cauliflower apple soup. And so just check it out and see if something resonates. So that is a little bit about diet and a first step that you can take to actually create a better dietary pattern to create the body you desire. Now let's shift our attention to lifestyle and how we can create the right environment with our lifestyle that allows the body to find its own equilibrium. And you remember the 5 layers of our existence. We have to feed the 5 layers of our being skillfully through our lifestyle mostly, that allows the body to actually feel great and amazing. A big factor of creating a good environment for our body, and you might guess it, drumroll, is reducing our stress level. So I feel like it's such a stigma to talk, oh yeah, I'm stressed and therefore I'm not feeling good, or oh yeah, I have heart problems because my stress and this and that. It's always stress. But really, it actually is that way. It is actually that simple. And for that conversation, let's turn a little bit towards hormones and how they actually get impacted by the stress level in your life. So there's 2 major categories of hormones for our conversation here. We have sex hormones and we have stress hormones. The sex hormones are mostly the estrogen, which is responsible for having a plump and youthful skin. It makes our breasts full. It gives us tons of lubrication in the body. It's also responsible for breast milk production, which we need earlier in life when we have babies. And it's also just responsible for the yin qualities in the body, for like appearing juicy and luscious and nice and plump. And then we have progesterone. And progesterone is also a sex hormone, and what it does, it keeps estrogen in check. Because if estrogen is in excess, it can create masses like fibroids and other overgrowth of tissue, like endometriosis would be an overgrowth of tissue. It also acts as a precursor to estrogen, and progesterone can actually turn into estrogen when the body needs it. And then we have stress hormones. And those are mainly cortisol and adrenaline, which are both produced in the adrenal glands. So both of cortisol and adrenaline are responsible for our flight reactions of fleeing and fighting. So both these hormones wanna be in check. They wanna be like in the right amounts in the body. The one on the left, which is the sex hormones, are our yin hormones. They make us plump and juicy and nice, and they make us just like, oh, I feel so comfortable in my body. And the yang hormones make us act. They are the activators. They make us do things. They make us go out things. And not one of them is better than the other, but we need them only in certain proportions. And what is happening in our society right now, that stress hormones are far too high. I mean, it used to be that, like, say a bear comes your way and you get all stressed out and you're like, oh my God, I gotta flee, there's a bear, or I gotta fight because there's a bear. But we don't have these sort of stresses anymore in our society. But what we do have is stresses, say like your phone beeping. That's kind of stressful. Phone beeping, computer beeping, your iPad doing something else, there's music playing in the background, you may be driving your car, there's almost an accident, there's all these stressors that come our way on a daily basis. And then it's our internal attitude that also causes that stress of like, hey, I need to be perfect, I need to just do my work perfectly, and I gotta show up as a mother perfectly, and I gotta show up as a wife perfectly, and I just gotta look great, and I gotta dress like a model, and it's just all these stressors that cause that cortisol and that adrenaline to spike. And then the body has a hard time keeping up, actually producing estrogen and progesterone and making us feeling nourished and grounded in our bodies. We are born with two buckets. There's the yin bucket and there's the yang bucket. So yin and yang are the terms from Chinese medicine. There's terms from Ayurveda, Brahmana, and Langana, but they're more difficult, so I'm borrowing the Chinese version. So we got the yin bucket, that's the nourishing thing. So that's where all of our sex hormones live. And then the yang bucket, all of our stress hormones live. So before the age of about 35 or so, we have a certain amount of sex hormones that the body naturally produces. So as I said before, yin and yang should be balancing each other out. So on the other hand, we have the yang bucket. So if there's a certain amount of sex hormones being created, so let's say at an amount of 100, we can sustain a certain amount of stress at the level of 100. So if the body produces 100 sex hormones, if the body also produces 100 stress hormones, we are all good. It's all balanced out. But what's happening at 35 is that the production of sex hormones, especially the production of progesterone, is reducing. And by the age of 50, it's maybe only around 50. So now we have 50 sex hormones, but we are still living the life that produces 100 stress hormones. And we have a discrepancy right here. So what does Western medicine do? And this is super cool. Like, how can you even out the equation? Well, it's quite simple. Western medicine is then saying, and it's quite clever, they're saying, well, sex hormones are going down. Well, why don't we just bring it on up with hormone replacement therapy so that we are back up to 100 in sex hormones? So that matches the stress hormones and we're all good again. But what is the other option? Because as we have discovered earlier, is that hormone replacement therapy isn't the end all. It can cause cancer. It can cause weight gain. It can cause all kinds of issues in the body. Doesn't allow the body to heal itself anymore. So what's the other option? The other option is we bring stress hormones down to meet the adjusted sex hormone level in the body. The advantage of that is what? No side effects, no weight gain, more happiness, more joy, and a body that is in a natural rhythm, and a body that is really listened to and honored. So here's the thing. Before menopause, the ovaries produce the bulk of estrogen. Then during menopause and the transition, ovaries either shut down or greatly diminish the activity of estrogen production. As we get older, we don't need as much estrogen anymore because we're not growing babies in the womb and we're not needing breast milk to feed them. But we do need estrogen for lubrication. So we do want to have a good amount of estrogen in the body. So when the ovaries shut down the production of estrogen, who takes over? Well, it's the adrenal glands. And as we remember, the adrenal glands were responsible also for the production of cortisol and adrenaline. Now, the thing is this, if we have lived a very stressful life and the adrenals are already burnt out and overworked, they have already produced so much cortisol and so much adrenaline that the body can't even think about taking on another job. And all of a sudden the body's saying, well, sorry, buddy, but you're going to have to produce estrogen now too. The adrenals are going to say, oh, sorry, buddy, but I'm going to do my best, but I'm really burnt out here, so I'm not sure what I can do. So what is a gal to do? So when the adrenals are burnt out, it's going to do its best job. Okay, so like the hormones just want to do a good job. They don't want to mess with you or they don't want to make you feel bad, but they just can't do any better. The thing is this, the body will always prioritize survival over reproduction 100% of the time. So if you live a life that requires you to have a lot of cortisol and adrenaline in your bloodstream, the body will always prioritize adrenaline and cortisol production over the production of estrogen and progesterone. And we end up in this negative cycle of stress response. So what's the answer? The answer really is taking down your stress level so that we can meet the lowered production of sex hormones and we actually just feel great in our bodies. So we have to become really wise in the way we're treating ourselves and really wise in the way we live our lives. So lifestyle. Here's an old-fashioned scale. The equation is really simple. On the left side, there's giving. On the right side, there's receiving. So left side, giving. The things that cost you energy. So for example, working, driving your kids to soccer practice, being in a traffic jam, doing your taxes, cooking, cleaning, working, taking care of your husband, doing stuff for other people. The right side is everything that brings you energy. So for example, having a good conversation with a friend, or taking a bath, or doing yoga, or going for a walk, receiving a massage, taking vacation, going to the ocean, enjoying the waters, all of those things. Which one of these sides weighs more for you, the giving or the receiving side? Please pause this video for just a little bit. Make 2 columns and write down on the left side, what are all the activities where you're giving? And then write down on the right side, everything you're doing to receive. So those are all your self-care practices. And then weigh out which one weighs more. So hit the pause button and do it. The likelihood is that if you're like most people in our society, the giving side will be much more heavy than the receiving side. And if that's so, then you know, hey, it's time for a little bit more self-care. It's time to adjust the way I am taking care of myself, because as the next 50 years roll around, I want to have a body that's vibrant and alive and juicy, and I want to have enough energy for my grandchildren, for my life, for my hobbies, for my sports, whatever it is. Self-care is non-negotiable when you enter the second half of life. The earlier you get this message, the better. If you catch yourself in your 30s and 40s, awesome. If you catch yourself in your 50s and 60s, great. The time to start proper self-care, skillful self-care, and more pronounced self-care is always now. Thanks so much for engaging today. The next video, we are going to look at the impact that we have as women on our relationships and how to shift that, and also how to get out of imbalance of giving and receiving. So stay tuned for the next video for part number 4. See you soon. the body's in a sort of stress response during that time, and it's not going to be able to absorb the food, although the quality of the food is really good.